Hey folks, I'm Adiraiju, the time-traveling monsterologist, and I'm here to take you back to when the economy was exploding, cars were still sharing the road with horses, and World War I was still the war to end all wars. Let's get the old time machine greased up and away we go. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you The Lost World, a silent film released in 1925. It holds the honor of being the first film shown on an airplane, and was one of the biggest hits of the Roaring Twenties. Keep in mind, though, that the movie is so old that a great deal of original footage has been lost, and some things have changed, and even little pieces of dialogue have been altered over the years. Some scenes and some parts of the movie are different than others depending on what version of the movie you watch, so my version of the movie might not be 100% identical to yours. Let's take a look. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's stupendous story of adventure and romance. Wow, say what you will about these silent films, they knew how to advertise. Dignity schmignity, that was impressive. The film starts off showing Sir Arthur Conan Doyle himself sitting in a chair and quoting his own words from the intro to the novel. Yeah, well, I have wrought my own darn plan in the span of 20 minutes if I show off some old movie and proceed at once to skin it. The film then cuts to the city of London, where we meet the novel's narrator, Edward Malone, and his girlfriend Gladys. Malone wants to propose, but Gladys refuses to marry someone who isn't a man of adventure. Malone agrees to head off and find some adventure, and leaves. Personally, I think Gladys is just hoping he'll get his stupid ass killed while out on that adventure, but that's just me. We then cut to the offices of the newspaper where Malone works. Apparently, one of the editors is in some hot water because he doubts a scientist named Professor Challenger and his assertions that he has discovered a population of prehistoric creatures alive and well in a remote part of the Amazon. What's more, Challenger is... some might call him belligerent. Others might call him bonkers. At any rate, Malone tries to talk his boss into letting him on a dangerous assignment, but winds up spilling ink everywhere, inking himself up in his panic, slipping and falling right into the office where he hears about Challenger. The editor forces him to go to the zoological hall, somewhere, to hear Challenger's lecture, even though reporters are barred. He gets in thanks to his friend, an explorer and hunter named Sir John Roxton. Everyone is heckling Challenger in the lecture center, particularly his arch-rival, a coleopterist, that's a guy who studies beetles, named Professor Summerlee. Challenger asks for volunteers for an expedition to the area. Roxton thinks Challenger is sincere and volunteers to go. Summerlee also volunteers, thinking this is a good way to expose Challenger as a fraud. Malone also volunteers, realizing this is that dangerous assignment he needs. When Challenger learns he's a reporter, though, he chases him out of the building personally. Wow! I think there'd be more young people interested in science today if modern scientists pulled crap like this. Apparently, there's a scene, too, that's now lost, where Malone evaded Challenger by running up and over the backbone of a dinosaur skeleton on display in the hall. Malone follows Challenger home and sneaks into his house to beg that he be allowed to join. Ooh, he's gonna face death all right. You know, I don't know how a modern London officer would react, but can you imagine a fistfight like that rolling right into a cop in modern America? They'd shoot out half the windows on the block before anyone was on their feet again. After they all pick themselves up, a cop breaks it up, but Malone concedes breaking and entering might not have been a good way to get Challenger to agree with him. Challenger is mollified by Malone's friendship with Roxton, and by his refusing to press charges. Challenger's wife chews him out, and Roxton also shows up at the house about now. Challenger shows them both the diary of an American explorer named Maple White, and then introduces Malone to his daughter, Paula White. It turns out Paula was part of her father's expedition to where they're going, a massive plateau deep in the Amazon which is home to prehistoric creatures. Unfortunately, the freaked-out porters bailed on Maple White, carrying Paula with them back to the coast. This isn't just for science, it's a rescue mission. Roxton starts hitting on Paula at this point. Funny thing to note, the original book had no major female characters in it apart from Gladys and Challenger's wife, and one reason Roxton volunteered for Challenger's expedition was that he was a notorious womanizer who'd made the wrong people mad and had to get out of town in a hurry. They head to South America by ship. Wow, that is one fast ship. They ought to take one of those everywhere. Heading off into the Amazon, they find themselves going upriver deep in the jungle somewhere along the borders of Peru, Brazil, and Colombia. They're held up for a bit because Challenger decided it'd be funny to tell them he wasn't going on the expedition, and giving them a map to the area that turned out to be blank paper. Malone starts making gooey eyes at Paula, and Summerlee busies himself studying the local beetles. When he can. When Challenger does arrive, he introduces them to Jocko the monkey, who he claims knows what roots and berries in the jungle are edible. Yeah, for monkeys maybe. Hey, Bob the native guy, get out of the shot! Heading deeper into the jungles, they pass a lot of stock footage of the local wildlife. There was another scene here that was lost involving a tribe of cannibals going after them, but apparently it wasn't important enough to the plot to warrant keeping in. Finally, they reach the plateau and camp out at the base for the night. A couple of bear cubs decide to raid their supplies. Full-grown spectacled bears my foot. Adult spectacled bears are bigger than Roxton. Finally, we see the top of the plateau, which seems to be inhabited by a guy in a gorilla suit. Looking down at the camp, he decides to rock their world. Looking up to see where that boulder came from, Challenger sees a pteranodon flying overhead, pointing out that this means his crazy story is true. The pterosaur then drops a massive chunk of meat down into the jungle below and just bitches about it without trying to retrieve it. What a slob. The next morning, they leave Challenger's butler Austin and a man named Zombo at the base of the plateau, where they clamber up a tall outcropping right next to the plateau. Most of the side of it is too steep to climb, save for this one outcropping. They cut down a tree on the outcropping and make a bridge of it to walk across to the main area. The guy in the ape suit is watching them the whole time. Unfortunately, after they get across, a brontosaurus comes nosing around the log, bumps it off, and effectively traps them all atop the plateau. That night, they make a campfire while Summerlee tortures the local wildlife. Lizards dressed up in feathers? Aha! We knew that's what they were all along! The ape-man spies on them from the tree over their campsite. I know the sequence is supposed to be tense, and it is, but all I can think of is how hot it must be in that ape suit, especially since the face is actually pretty well designed, and has as much makeup as mask. They probably peeled that off his face after the shoot and got hosed with a deluge of pent-up sweat. Meanwhile, trouble's coming. An Allosaurus nearby goes on a rampage. It kills a Trachodon and attacks a Triceratops before being driven off. Unfortunately, then it tromps right up to the campfire. Ugh! Is that a dinosaur, or did Slenderman climb his bony ass up here? The rifles only annoy it, but Malone manages to drive it off by flinging a flaming branch into its maw. Finally, it tries to tackle a Lagothalmus, and the horned dinosaur kills it. Our heroes realize that the trees around them are useless as shelter, and they won't last long without a safe camp. Malone climbs the tree to look for something better. You see anything, Malone? It's the middle of the night in the bloody jungle! What do you think I see? The ape-man ambushes Malone up in the tree, but Roxton manages to shoot it in the shoulder and drives it off. At this point, a Tyrannosaurus rumbles up and kills the Lagothalmus, before leaping up to snatch a pterosaur out of the sky. The next day, they find a cave system high up in a nearby hillside and move in for shelter. Challenger uses some bamboo to try and make a half-assed catapult, and during an argument with Summerlee, it winds up catapulting Summerlee quite nicely onto a rigging hanging from the ceiling. Malone hits on Paula some more, and Roxton hunts deeper in the caves where he finds some volcanic activity. He also finds the skeleton of Maple White. Even deeper in, he finds that some of the caves have entrances far up the side of the plateau, and has a talk with Zambo and Austin down below. Zambo and Austin plan to make a rope from their hammocks, and have Jocko climb up the side of the plateau to get them down. Malone chats up Paula some more, and apparently they're an item or something now. They've been on the plateau maybe 24 hours, and Malone already says he intends to have Summerlee marry them. What about Gladys? Roxton tells Malone to go out and get the professors, and then tells Paula the sad news about her father. Sad acting. As Challenger and Summerlee watch a Brontosaurus, an Allosaurus attacks the animal. You know, I think they've got something stuck in their teeth. They better get it out. I guess that might work. The Brontosaurus splats down into a soft mud flat that breaks its fall at the base of the plateau, and keeps it alive but trapped in the mud. The Allosaurus wanders off at this point, no doubt incredibly frustrated and looking for man burgers. The volcano somewhere on the plateau begins getting frisky. Some people down in the jungle... Wait, who the heck are these guys? The fire brigade? Anyway, they're looking worried. Meanwhile, we see the ape-man and his buddy in their own cave. Okay, seriously, what are a chimpanzee and an ape-man doing up there? I know that the displaced great apes are probably a lot more likely than a breeding population of living dinosaurs in the early 20th century, but it drives me so much crazier. Roxton and Paula take shelter in the cave system as the volcano erupts and a whole stampede of dinosaurs roars past the cave. Malone, Challenger, and Summerlee bumble about in the burning jungle with huge amounts of smoke, toxic gases, and burny stuff. Shit, that volcano's launching mortar shells. It's even more dangerous than I thought. The next morning, the volcano's calmed down, but most of the dinosaurs have survived, as has the entire cast. I guess they found the cave sometime in the night. They manage to escape through climbing down the rope ladder that Jocko brings up, but the ape-man isn't done with them yet. He tries to pull the ladder back up and trap them atop the plateau, but Roxton shoots him dead. At the base of the plateau, our heroes see the Brontosaurus from above is still stuck in the mud. Realizing they're not trapped anymore, Paula rejects Malone, knowing he'll go back to Gladys, while Roxton just stands there and acts like a dork. Suddenly, this guy shows up. I think he was one of the fire brigade guys from earlier. Hibbert gets an idea, and they make plans to get the dinosaur back to civilization. Back in London, Challenger holds a press conference planning to show the dinosaur off, but he gets a call and he learns that the cables unloading the Brontosaurus from the ship have snapped. The dinosaur is on the loose in London. Yes, this is the first movie starring a giant prehistoric creature loose in a modern city to cause havoc. From Pacific Rim to Godzilla all the way back to King Kong, all of them can honestly say that the Lost World did it first. And what a rampage. Granted, it's not much compared to what would come later, but the Brontosaurus does quite a number on London. It tears an apartment building apart, sends people screaming in underground areas, and, trips a whole bunch of pedestrians with his tail. Until I recapture... What is he gonna do, wrestle it to the ground? I rescind everything I ever said. Professor Challenger is the most badass character in cinema. Unfortunately, before he can do that, the dinosaur tromps out onto the Tower Bridge, which collapses under its weight. The dinosaur swims down the Thames and out to sea. Challenger regrets the loss of his dinosaur, but is thrilled to have his findings vindicated. Malone learns that Gladys married a clerk while he was away, allowing he and Paula to start a relationship. Roxton gets bummed out at having lost Paula, and the swimming dinosaur scares the bejabbers out of some ships on the Atlantic somewhere. The end. One thing I particularly loved about this movie is how the characters always bounce off each other in a way that makes each memorable and sympathetic, often quarreling and arguing, but always managing to place mutual survival atop the plateau above petty bickering. In a modern movie, Roxton and Malone's feud over Paula would end in a fistfight at best and possible murder at worst, while Summerlee would attempt to suppress the Lost World's existence by ditching them all on the plateau. Reportedly, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle loved the movie, although it wasn't overly faithful to the novel. The biggest change was that a war between a whole tribe of ape men and an American Indian tribe who lived atop the plateau was completely omitted. This movie was not the first instance of stop-motion dinosaurs starring in a live-action film, but it was far and away the most ambitious project of its kind ever released. Obi truly honed his craft to perfection here, and it might have been regarded as the most influential special effects project of its time until King Kong came along 8 years later to steal its thunder. I'll see you next time. This is Adiraiju, the time-traveling kaijuologist, signing off.